Let's just start back up a little bit. How did you get started doing this?
It was, I mean, the personal thing is, I'm someone that went through the criminal justice system. I went through it as a white person, with middle class parents, so there was like resources, and
Okay.
I can understand, like, okay, this is obviously going to go different for me, for socioeconomic reasons, for racial reasons, and then George Floyd happened,
Okay.
and that was, I mean, listen, everyone's like, well, if you look at his criminal record, and I'm like, bro, when in my older days, I don't drink anymore, I don't do drugs anymore. When I did do drugs and drank, I passed counterfeit money 3 separate times, intentionally, not unintentionally, intentionally. I thought, I looked at that, I was like, it did not end that way. I was
Hmm.
like, there would be no danger of it ending with a public execution. So that, like, was something that, like, rattled me. And then I thought, you know what? I'm listening to them give their, talking points as to, why the cop was in the right, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, you know what? Maybe if I can get them to say the quiet part out loud, maybe let me get them to, say something to the effect of, give me the real reason. I'm a white person. I know the real reason. I mean, I'm not like, you're an expert in your, on being black and the black experience.
I'm
I know
definitely an
what
expert at being black.
I'm an expert in white supremacy. Like, I know. Listen, I don't try to tell me how white supremacy goes. You know, I know how
Okay.
that works.
Okay.
So then it was like, all right, let me talk to people. Let me sort of mock them in a way, and then it became me just, all right, let me just go to MAGA rallies and just talk to people directly, and do so. I kind of relished in the fact that, when I would approach people, pretending to be amongst them, I thought, this is they open up a little bit more, and they talk the way that they would talk to other people. They wouldn't talk defensively. I
Right.
didn't want them to be, uh, although things have changed recently. So after a few years, I don't even, there's no undercover thing about me.
I don't even think you have to. It's just
Yeah.
my observation is that they seem to be so, first of all, so certain, in their what if we're talking about immigration or tariffs or
Oh yeah.
abortion or whatever it might be, they don't even realize what they don't know.
It's not even that. It's more of, I think we're in an age right now where you have people that they don't want to learn,
Hmm.
right? Like, this is, and I keep finding myself in arguments for things that are very, very simple to verify. Like, like, you ever get in an argument and you're like, we could verify this in 30 seconds. Like, someone tells you that's not how that works, and you look it up and you're like, okay, not only are you wrong, but, like, this took me no time to see this.
Right.
It wasn't like I didn't need to do, you know, grad school
What do
level
you think it
research.
is? Is it that they are so invested at this point, in the MAGA or
I think people want
whatever
to.
it
Well,
is?
they're invested in, basically Trump has told them, you're not going to have to pay taxes anymore, and we're just going to get China to pay everything. They're going to pay all the tariff money. China pays all the tariffs, and instead of taxes, there'll be just tariffs like we used to have, because there was a time
Oh
in
yeah, before we
American
had
history
the
when,
IRS. Yeah.
yeah, when we had tariffs, and that was a form of, a sole form of tax, a dominant form of taxation. And we're like, well, let's return to that. And there's so many reasons why that's not possible. Um, well, I mean, it is possible, but it's also like a tax
Well,
on.
we're seeing what
It's
happened.
a tax on, like, the middle class, lower class. If you spend The
Sure.
middle class spends 110% of their income, so they spend, and they spend most of it. A lot of your income is spent on food and certain goods. So yeah. So where was I? So yeah, I mean, people want to believe like, oh well, I'm not going to have to pay taxes anymore. That's it.
What's crazy about that is I would be willing to bet most of them don't pay taxes anyway. You know?
You mean because they
Well, I
make
mean,
30
no, I
grand a
don't mean
year?
because they're avoiding taxes. I mean, I'm just thinking about
Yeah,
who
like
his
they're
base is
yeah,
really lower income people
yeah.
who more than likely do not pay taxes. It's just like, when
That is a very, and it's like we never get into the economic thing. That's with I've found that a lot of people don't really understand that they are poor. You see like way too many people are simping for billionaires and in unnecessarily. Like, I mean, it's great. Billionaires have a nice life. There's some perks. It's good to be the king. But I found when I try to talk to people about it, like I'm like, you are in, like, they don't want, no one thinks of themselves as a member of the lower class.
mm,
Maybe you can find people like that are, they're senior citizens, they're not working anymore, right?
right.
They're, acutely like they're literally not bringing any income in, and it's just their social security, and they fixed income, and they're very aware that like there's a fixed amount, and there's no hustle culture involved.
Okay.
uh, and but a lot of people I've seen when I try to talk to them about stuff, I'm like, I feel like I'm starting. I need to like go back further and start like with the basics of like, all right, you don't make enough. Um, there was a lot of bits that I used to do that people that I had to abandon. I had a whole bit where I would talk to MAGA and say he's been so great. Before Trump was elected, my family, we only had like one extra house for vacation and we were renting it. Now we own three more houses. And uh I like under a more leftist crowd, like they would eat me alive. And with that crowd, they were like,
Okay.
like, and because I was trying to get people upset, and like no
Right.
one
It
got
just didn't
upset,
work.
and
Well,
it
I
just
think
got
a
like,
lot of that comes from, and I was actually talking about this yesterday. Um, I don't know, maybe it started in the 80s. That's sort of my frame of reference because that's when I got into finance. But there just seems, we've made billionaires into celebrities, and so people view them. I mean, look at Trump. That's his appeal is because the majority of people first got to know him on television, you
yeah,
know, and so it's almost like this, they're starstruck with the idea of being a billionaire, and I think there are a lot of people that think, they're just one lottery ticket away or something, lottery ticket or monopoly, token or something from being in that class, and
yeah.
that's where they
I
see themselves.
I my own personal experience with that is I didn't realize how poor I was. I lived for many years making between 20 and 30,000 a year. Like
Okay.
30,000 was like, and I think like in my like late 30s, I finally like broke through and was like started making like between 60 and 80. Like, check me out, uh, right? And then I started to make like 80K, and I was just like, look at me, like,
Hmm.
paid my rent on time, paid like, and then started to realize, wait, like that was like that's right near the poverty line. Like, that's not, in New York City, living in New York City at 20K a year,
It
30K,
don't work.
like that is, I'm like, oh right, like I was starving. There were days, like there were times I qualified for public assistance, and never in my head was I like, I am poor. I am at the poverty line. This is, I'm jumping the turnstile to get to work, and it was just like, nah, like hustle culture, like, sit, get that grind.
Yeah.
Uh, and it was, so there was it's a weird, I get it on some level. Um, and the flip side is I get resentful now because I remember one time during the credit crisis, it was bad for everyone. It's horrendous for me. I had to get on food stamps. And I got on food stamps late, and I got off of it early because of all this propaganda of like, oh, the welfare queen, it's gonna, make you lazy. You're gonna be lazy. You're gonna be this. Meanwhile, like while I was on it, like I was like there was like a relief. I was less stressed out. I was like, I have a fridge full of food. I can go home. I can just eat, and I can like it's one thing I'm not worried about. Like, God, whoo. Uh, you
The
know,
irony of that whole narrative is, I don't know what the percentage is, but I'm pretty sure most people that are on public assistance, SNAP or whatever, they're working.
oh
you
yeah,
know,
no,
they're
yeah, like
working.
I
It's
worked
not
in a
like they're being
restaurant.
lazy.
Yeah, the kitchen staff,
That's what's so depressing about going to Walmart. You walk in there and the
they work 40
associates are,
hours a week.
yeah, they're working 40 hours a week and they probably still
And
don't
they
make enough
qualify.
to survive.
Yeah, and they qualify for public,
Yeah.
some
I
form
think
of.
Walmart employees Walmart is like one of the biggest components of folks that get SNAP benefits.
Yeah, and the other statistic I love to throw out is the average time that someone is on public assistance average is 2 years, because
Wow.
and it's not, to be honest, like you've looked at the numbers. I looked at the numbers for what public assistance is. It's not crazy, and but when I do speak to MAGA, like that is a very top of mind issue of these these welfare queens. And it seems like a very dated thing to be upset about. I'm like, how
Hmm.
mad are you going to get about this? Like, and I'm sure if you live in some like Appalachian town, like I'm sure there are families that are, generational welfare.
Hmm.
But it is so like not common to where it's like, it is not as widespread. It's 2 years.
I'm
It's,
in North Carolina, and I guess this would have been towards the end of the pandemic. When they were having a hard time getting people to come back to the office, and
yeah.
people, because people had gotten the taste of working at home and not just grinding themselves to death, right? And I can't even tell you how many people, and I'm immersed. Probably not like, I don't know, if I
You
were
work
in
in finance.
Alabama. I'm
If you
sorry.
work in finance, you're in North Carolina, you're in a you people that are, yeah, like very conservative views.
Well, I mean, just by virtue of where I am, there are not a lot of Democrats,
No.
right? There's some, and I probably know damn near all of
Yeah.
them. but I would get people that would just, sort of in a general conversation, they would make their observation that, well, the problem is we got all these people on welfare that don't want to work,
Yeah.
and I happen to know sort of the test for who gets welfare in North Carolina. It is, you have to be so destitute. I'm talking about family of four making $600 a month. It's like that. And I'm like, nobody nobody is on welfare in North Carolina not working because it's fun. Because I mean, it's really just stunning how broke you have to be just to qualify.
And
You
that
know,
it's funny that like the stimulus, the money they gave us every
right?
week during the pandemic, I used that to switch careers. That's
Okay.
probably half the reason I became an influencer and made more money. I was working in real estate, and real estate was just like, you know,
Oh yeah.
tanked. And so I was working, and I was on a job that was 100% commission. So I got
Mm.
to, and it was like very comfortable for me where I could be like, all right, I worked straight through the pandemic. I did not slack a minute. Maybe there was like 2 to 3 weeks of like I worked less, but I went hard, you
And this
know
was in real estate.
real estate. And then and that was, I needed that money. Like, cause I was like, I was like, oh my God, okay. Like, cause it slowed way down. So, and I used that to transition and stuff like that. So, these are things that, that radicalized me to get me doing what I'm doing.
Well, I'll tell you, man, it's pretty refreshing because, you know, you don't really insult these people or talk down to them. I mean, they do most of the talking. And it's just you've been able to get in a situation where you can kind of draw it out of them. But boy, but for the person on the other end that's watching it, it's just pretty revealing, number one, about because I think all of us that are sort of, not on the MAGA in that spectrum or bubble or whatever it is, we all wonder, how is it that these people are so unaware of like reality? You know,
Yeah,
it's just,
you gotta go through a lot to get there, and then yeah, once you're there, it's I don't I have friends that think there's I don't know, sometimes there's ways to talk to someone to make them understand like X, and you know some people, like you can be like explain like, okay, this is the data set, this is how this works, I can show you this, and they go like, oh, okay, and they change
yeah.
their minds.
Well, somebody mentioned in the comments, and this is one of, I think this might have been one of the first things of yours that I posted, and it looked like you might have been in New York or in some big city, and you're talking to, I think it's a Latino man, and about tariffs. And then
Oh
another
yeah,
guy
yeah,
walks up and says, "Hey, I'm in the business. I sell T-shirts or something like that."
yeah, yeah. Oh, no,
And it kind
he
of,
sells Trump, he sells MAGA merch,
yeah,
and he will literally be directly affected by the tariffs. Like it will directly affect him. And it was the full conversation was very puzzling because I was like, oh, like you get, and he gets his blanks. He has to get them from overseas. It's
yeah,
cheaper. He couldn't make the price points like for the stuff sold in New York. I mean the States. So he had it was very detailed. I was like, because I was like,
yeah.
oh, you sell T-shirts? So do I. I understand how this works. You get the T-shirts, they're printed in here, and there's a price point. Blah blah. Okay. Um, he was like, yeah, well, they're going to be cheaper. The United States ones are going to T-shirts are going to be cheaper, and I was like, no, they're not. Like nothing. That's not how that works at all. I mean, and I'm not. And listen, I'm not like if Donald Trump said, "Listen, I'm going to create a subsidy program where we build factories that do injection molding and all this stuff, so stuff can be made here for cheap." Okay, okay, um, that's different than just like I'm just going to tariff people, and hopefully the free market will catch up soon enough. And the free, because
Or
the
maybe
factories.
the importer will just eat the tariff.
Yeah, factories. It's so easy
Oh
for people
yeah,
to just make like a factory. I mean, what does it take? Like a few hours, really?
more
Uh,
like a few years at
yeah,
minimum.
yeah. You got to get the. I mean, how hard is it to acquire land, brick and mortar? Build. Get
Well, and,
equipment
and
in
not for
there.
nothing, we're deporting all of our labor. So
Oh, yeah,
so there's that, you
that
know.
was another one that where I was explaining to people, and people were like, "Huh." They were like, "That kind of sounds weird." Because it went against everything they had been told. I was
Say
like,
more about that.
the
What do you mean?
undocumented immigrants,
Okay.
they pay taxes.
Oh
They
yeah.
they pay money into the tax system. There's ITIN number, the ITIN. They like these people. They get taxes taken out even if they're undocumented. They get. And people were like, that kind of sounds fake. I don't really believe that. And I'm like, yeah, it does sound fake. It sounds like the opposite thing that you've been told for the past several years. And that was like something that made me kind of sad because I'm like, you have someone that, they're decent. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
they if it's like there is certain some people have some knowledge base where they're like, well, yeah, I mean, wow, I didn't know that. I thought they were a drain on our economy. They're actually a net positive, like like it's not even like a small margin. It's like by a very large
Oh
margin.
yeah.
And they're like, it's like, wow, okay. And that was kind of sad to me because you were like, you're getting people that, might otherwise,
Well, they're being taken advantage of.
yeah.
It's when you really get down to it.
And
You
that's a
know,
lot of, and I think that's like a failure of, the Democratic Party and progressive institutions is there's a lot of the, I was sort of screaming about this for years. I didn't have a big enough platform. No one's who's going to listen to. I started making TikToks. No one's who's going to listen to me. My problem was is that there was no institutional, push to do counter messaging.
right.
There was nothing like, immigrants pay taxes, how much they pay into the system. Uh, you know, the tariffs are a tax on the poor, and a lot of in how immigration works, really,
Hmm.
and a lot of processes that there's even someone who's progressive will just be like, they're susceptible to that messaging, like DEI, right? Like
Oh
there was
yeah.
no one honestly go, no one knows what DEI is, right? Like,
or who the biggest beneficiaries are white women.
no, that's proof. DEI and affirmative action are two separate things. Affirmative action, yeah, at the top of the pecking order is white women, but no one understands that DEI and affirmative action are two separate things.
Right.
DEI is the hiring practice, and DEI is for when they're in the company to make sure they don't leave, because they would look at the numbers and go, oh, like, why are our Chinese men leaving? Like, why are Asian men leaving this company? We like them here. What the hell? They're leaving, and they were like, why are black women leaving this company? Why are the only people sticking around are white men? And so it was like, no, well, we're creating a very toxic environment. We need to create an inclusive environment so people like coming here every day and they stay here. But like, there's been the Democratic Party and progressive institutions never really pushed that to explain like what the fuck any of that is.
So I want to go back to what you were saying. Well, I guess as you were talking about just the whole democratic infrastructure, and
Yeah.
it's really, I'm starting to see on this platform a lot of the traditional media folks, are sudden, that have gotten cast aside, for whatever reason. Um, and they're here, and it always frustrates. I've been on Substack 5 years
Wow.
before there was even this notes platform, when it
Yeah.
was just about email and newsletters.
Yeah.
And I have a particular expertise that is unique in that not a lot of black people have my particular knowledge, my skill set. I'm
And
not
then
saying,
what? And
I'm
how
not,
how so?
well, I started the first black investment firm in Arkansas, the
Oh
one of
wow.
the only. And then I spent 13 years working on Wall Street, running a trading operation. I think when I was there might have been, as far as head traders go, maybe there were half a dozen. I don't think there were even that many. And, when just as a whole, I'll bet you go to Merrill Lynch, they're probably maybe 1% of their thousands of employees are black. And,
Yeah.
if you expand that to people of color, maybe it's, I don't know, it's not a big percentage.
It's
So,
not. It doesn't correlate with the black population.
no. But what I mean by that is, in terms of people who can have a conversation about tariffs, from a financial services point of view, and talk about the stock market. So, well, I guess what I'm saying is, it's a little frustrating that I don't, just like you were saying, when you talk about Biden tried to bring in some influencers a little bit, but I think by then it was kind of too late,
Yeah,
you know?
they did this push like a few months before the election, and I'm like, I mean, they were getting me to make these videos 2 weeks before the
Yeah,
election, and I'm like, I don't know what's going to change anyone's mind. I mean, I'm
I
sitting
don't
here,
either. I mean,
and I'm
maybe
like,
we get tired of losing like this.
yeah, I mean,
Maybe.
I mean that's sort of like a thing of like the Democrats campaign, like when they remember there's an election, and Republicans campaign the entire
Oh, they
cycle.
nonstop, 24/7.
Yeah, no,
and they have like their own. So, for example, here's what I'm getting at though. You look at that side of the fence and how they um, elevate guys like Charlie Kirk
oh yeah,
and you go on Facebook and look at who the top newsletters are on Facebook, and I would be willing to bet I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook, but the top 5 or 10 are gonna be conservative leaning guys that are doing basically what we're doing right now, except conservatives are throwing money at them, to elevate their message.
well, like
And
the Mercer family,
oh yeah,
Peter Thiel. I
sure.
mean, it's like you get
And
like
guys like that don't know, so I have reached out to some of the obvious liberal, not even for money, but hey, I know a whole lot about finance, and I notice you don't ever really have any people of color talking about the stock market or about this calamity that we just had. I've been through pretty much every financial calamity going back to like 1987. I can talk
yeah,
about this. Crickets, you know, and
yeah,
and I don't have a publicist, but I'm not hard to find.
no, yeah,
So, I
and
mean, I just
that
think
is.
that's one of the failures, and it doesn't even have to be me in this particular, yeah, that's my wheelhouse, but we could be talking about any number of things, and the Democrats seem to be so controlled by the consultant class, I guess.
I wish that is like you say that it's like when MAGA hears the word DEI. Like when I would have to listen to some of these consultants and they would talk about like the data sets and the focus testing,
Okay.
and I'm like, and I was like, I am going to like lose it right now of like, just like, okay, I'm like, just I think one of the things that not like I one of the things that is a strength of Donald Trump's is he just goes off script.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, he's
you know
not like A/B testing what he's
yeah,
getting ready to say.
he does like he gets some real-time feedback in that. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a clip of, it's not that he's not data testing and all that, like there's a clip of him learning for the first time like that these people react to trans people, like that issue is a big deal for them, like he's
Hmm.
talking to them about it, and like he's talking about something else, and like he's like, trans thing, that's a big deal, and they're all like, yeah, and they're all like pitchforks, and torches, and he's like, oh well, I didn't know, okay, and like you see him sort of get it, like, okay, well, I was saying Mexicans for a while, and that got me some
That kind of worked.
runway, but this, okay, I'm going to use this one now.
Dude, in
Uh,
North Carolina, I mean, even on MSNBC, every other ad was something to do with trans
yeah,
this,
I,
trans
I
that.
personally, I think that when you don't know what the Democrats stand for,
Mm,
the anti-trans, the scare, the satanic panic, that's going
yeah,
to work. It's not going to work on AOC. You
right.
even actually, like, MAGA knows exactly what she stands for. There are MAGAs that kind of like, when they talk about it, they're like, is she on our side? Like, because she has gone against the establishment,
Sure.
directly head on. So anyone paying attention would be like, like, damn. I
What's
mean,
so bad about her?
yeah, they're like, I mean, I don't agree with her, but like, huh, where Bernie Sanders, someone like where exactly who they are,
Hmm.
and because then it's like, okay, well, because the whole point that they're trying to make is, well, while we're worried about the economy, they're worried about, you know, DEI and trans, and making sure everything's trans inclusive, and and stuff like that, and why not worry about the economy, versus someone who's like, you have a Democrat coming in saying like, this is how we get the economy going and how you get your money to stay in your community and blah blah blah. And they go, everyone's like, okay, yeah, I'm feeling that. I can get down with that per se. Versus that's my thing, because there are a lot of Democrats who think maybe we just need to toss trans people under the bus, if we want to wait.
That's the thing to me. And I've actually written about this. I've had some of my, guys I used to work with that I mean, we have similar politics. And then just sort of out of left field, it would be like, yeah, Democrats really don't need to go too far to the left. This whole trans thing, and I'm like, so tell me what the Democratic Party's policies are. About like they're really going to benefit. Is there some bill you're talking about or what? Well, they don't know. It's just that they've been bombarded with Republicans. Basically, Democrats allow Republicans to define them and to set what the field of play is going to be, and then they're just steadily, having to, they're wrong-footed, and they are constantly on defense rather than, as you were saying, sort of saying this is where we are on the economy. This is our message,
Yeah,
and
I think
sticking and just sticking with it.
yeah, and a lot of cultural spaces have been, sort of, dominated by conservatives, like finance culture. Like, it's like, you could get on TikTok today, just make videos being like, this is how this works. That's not how that worked. And I know this because I worked in investment banks from like the 80s, 90s, the aughts to the
Okay.
present, and I'm acutely aware of this, and you don't
Maybe you can
have,
help me, man. I don't do TikTok too well. I would love to. I mean,
I mean,
I can kind of do it,
I
but
mean, honestly, TikTok is just. I feel like anyone, as long as you are speaking, this is going to sound crazy. It's not like a strategy per se.
yeah,
It's more of like you're talking about something that's honest to you,
okay.
right? When you like that is what changed things for me. Like I was making, very generic sketches for TikTok, and then the second I was like, let me make something about something I care about. Like, I found my like voice.
Mm,
Like things started to click, and to this day, if I'm making a video and like I don't really care, it's like something like, no, I care about this. I'm gonna make a video about this. I give a shit about this, and then it does that does better, and that I think that's, it's like finding your voice, versus, and then the best part about not having an audience on TikTok is you can just make videos saying and doing whatever, no one's watching, and then you get time to develop yourself. Because that's how it was when I started. No one was watching, and then randomly it just popped. I
yeah,
just
it's funny that
video,
way.
and then I just made a video, and I was like, oh, okay, like people are like responding to this.
Let me
Let
do
me
some
keep
more of
this
that.
up, and like let me keep this, So that's been the thing. I mean, I
So,
think you
so
you have a wealth of experience having been in the finance
yeah,
sphere, and and you also at the same time, you don't think poor people should be, dying on the street. You're not like one of those. You don't praise supply side Jesus.
huh.
Like you have,
I've certainly made my share of mistakes as it goes, but growing up in the South under Jim Crow kind of shapes you a little bit. Where even though I was on Wall Street, I always in the back of my mind knew how bad stuff could get.
yeah.
So, and having been, um, just
Wait,
on
wait,
the,
how old? Wait, dude, how old are you? Get the fuck out. What are you
um,
growing up during Jim Crow? I'm like, how
well,
old do you have?
well, I'll be in a couple of weeks. I'll be 67.
Oh, fucking
So,
hell. God damn it, bro. Fuck. Okay.
so, so, and I'm from Arkansas. So, I used to just blow guys away on the trading desk. When people get to talking about the olden days. And I would say, dude, I didn't even go to school with white people till I was in junior high school. So don't don't
Yeah.
tell me. Right. So
The
yeah, I
good, the
mean
good
it's
old
and
days. Yeah.
and that's the thing about it is people have a perception that all this stuff black people are mad about happened like 100 years ago. Dude, it did not. you know.
Yeah. History was not that long ago. I kind of feel like that's been the way it was like since, you know, black people were emancipated.
Yeah.
It was like, I feel like it was like, bro, like, you're emancipated. Like, relax. Like, what do you guys
Yeah,
want?
really can't. Why don't you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps? You've been
Yeah,
out of slavery a whole year. I mean, come on,
yeah.
get with
Like,
it.
what the hell? Like, it's been a year. Like, bro, like, come on.
Yeah,
Get on that.
it's something.
Yeah, get on that grind. But that's that. I mean, that's a whole like racial capitalism.
So I want to talk about something else. One of your videos I ran across early. I think maybe earlier this week, where you and another guy were at some. You were talking to these two uh,
John
pro-life.
Kissinger. We're at Supreme Court. We're at SCOTUS.
Okay, yeah, yeah, and
That was so we went there because Planned Parenthood. It's a Supreme Court's hearing a case called Planned Parenthood versus South Carolina. South Carolina is trying to kick Planned Parenthood off of their Medicaid program, their state program,
okay,
and their claim is, hey, we don't want our state money to go towards abortion. But the money doesn't go towards abortion. There's something called the Hyde Amendment,
right.
which forbids, federal, funds from going towards abortion. Planned Parenthood, if they want to do abortion, they have to get private funding for that. And their argument is, well, you're lying. Money's fungible, so you're just, flipping the budgets around and, waxing the numbers, and this is all a shell game you're playing.
So are they just? I mean, is that just some conjecture that they're making, or do they have what kind of proof? This is what always gets me: is these guys say a lot of things. I rarely, if ever, see them actually have receipts.
Well, I mean, it's like all you need is like one Libs of TikTok video, and that's it. I mean, it's like you need one Libs of TikTok video of someone being like, "Hey, come on in for an abortion. I'll do it."
No, Project
And
Veritas or something, I guess,
yeah, and
right?
then but it's not even a doctor or something. It's like something that person's never worked for Planned Parenthood, but of course, like that's everyone's like, "All right, I got it." Like that, we did it. Uh, so yeah, there's never, yeah. I mean, like Planned Parenthood is like the 2% of what they do is abortion. They get audited every year. They do this, but like I said, there's no effective counter message for this. So that these people they've been allowed to run rampant and trash Planned Parenthood. They've done the messaging to the Black community saying like, well, these are they put these in Black communities because Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist.
Yeah,
And
they went there. I remember that part of it.
Democrats, they want, they just want to sterilize Black people, and it's a whole conspiracy, vaccines, so and so, and preying upon the inequities of healthcare,
Sure.
for Black people, and the historical inequities. It's not a hard sell to convince someone that
Oh yeah.
the
Yeah, I mean,
medical
they just
community.
basically frame it like Tuskegee or any number of things that have happened,
Yeah.
and yeah. So I thought it was interesting in that video in particular because their facts. Well, I can't. What they were saying was just not even factual. And there was a certain point I noticed the woman. It seemed like she was on her cell phone, like trying to fact check. Is this really? Am I really wrong about this?
No, she was looking up for more ammunition because
Okay,
at
okay.
first I
Either
was
way,
like,
though,
I
it's
was
sort of
like,
like,
I was just baiting her, being like, well, it's not true. That's this, and I was being like arguing with them, like kind of the way they argue with everyone else, where like, they would just say something, and I'd be like, that's not true. There's no proof of that, and then so she was like on her phone, being like, you son of a bitch, I'll show you, and I'm like, "Oh." But they were taking the whole Black community thing. They've
oh
learned
yeah, looking
they've
out for
learned
it.
to use to weaponize progressive language, uh, and progressive values against it, where they'll be like, oh, this harms the Black community. You know, Black people would really do well if we shut down the Department of Education, and if we shut down Planned Parenthood. I'm sure in some communities that's the only access to gynecological care they can
Yeah,
get.
it's like there's not like like an overwhelming number of hospitals in lower income areas
Yeah.
anyway, let alone like majority black areas. You know, yeah, it was
Yeah, they
fascinating.
want to weaponize that toward, to say like, well, you know, this is the Democrats' plan. They want to, rather than be like, all right, well, why are there, why is the only thing in the black community, you know, why is the only place for them to go to get care this
So let
institute?
me ask you something. What made you come to Substack? Is it because the whole thing of TikTok kind of being on shaky ground?
Honestly, I learned my lesson where I'm like, years ago, I came up during the first TikTok ban.
Okay.
Like the first TikTok ban, oh, the olden days. And I was back then. I only had a presence on TikTok, and that I was like, all right, I need to diversify because you don't know what I don't like. I don't know what the hell is going to happen with any of these platforms, and also like algorithms change. Like they just there's no love. Like these apps, these platforms, they do not love you. The second things turn, they will change their algorithm,
Oh yeah.
shut down,
I mean,
what I mean?
Instagram is the worst. You can't. I can't even keep up with my feed on Instagram, let alone anything else.
Yeah, it is. And Instagram is the most opaque, where like there's no way to appeal anything really. Like they've taken stuff down of mine that was I was like, where I'm the one getting harassed or something, and I'm like, and it was like, and they got it taken down for harassment, and I'm like, I am the victim of that. I'm like, this is bullying and harassment. I'm like, yes, to
Good
me,
luck
I
trying to
am the
talk to
account holder.
customer service, right?
You're like, this guy grabbed me by the collar, and they're like, I don't know, seems like that guy was being harassed. We don't want to promote that. I'm like,
Wow.
yeah, or like weird stuff there that was like, and that was like the irony is like the only place that I found things to be really safe was Twitter before
Oh
Elon
yeah.
bought it. I kept telling tons of creators, I was like, migrate your content there. It's
Oh,
great.
Twitter was great. I was an early adopter of Twitter, and I just basically talked about stuff I know, which wasn't particularly fashionable at the time, but I still had a decent. I mean, for some, and this was really before I started writing and doing what I'm doing now. I don't know, maybe I had 13 or 14,000 followers,
Yeah,
but respectable, but nothing
yeah,
fancy.
it's good.
But as Twitter started rolling out, different functionality, I was perfectly happy, and I ended up on Notes because Elon Musk bought Twitter, and I mean, it escalated so fast into just a total hellscape that I couldn't. My blood pressure was I just couldn't take it.
There's like a part of me that was sort of, I don't want to say I was glad at what happened with Twitter, but there was a part of me that was like, okay, well, now America is sort of understanding what I've been seeing, because I'm like, I travel the country and I see this, and all of a sudden now all of that is on the front page of Twitter, and there's no
Mm.
escaping it, all of these conspiracy theories. And it was like, all right, well, yeah, no, this is what I've been seeing that no one is really aware of.
Oh,
And
it shocked me, and I
yeah,
thought, I mean, just because it's not all bots. I mean,
yeah,
just in fact, yeah, even people I know that would send me stuff that they had seen on Twitter, and I'm like, dude, I didn't. This is what you're looking at, So, let me ask you this: Are you talking to like any farmers, or because just with this tariff stuff that's happening, they've really got to be nervous.
I
I would
talked to
think.
people that were, I mean, God, I talked to people that had USDA like subsidies shut down because of Doge.
Wow.
In the I mean they and I at this point,
So are they still like Team Trump, or what? What do they? How do they handle it?
I I don't understand. I've seen, I talk to, I see people, and I do see these people like making these videos now where they're like, my business is going to be wiped out because of Trump's tariff. I voted for him, and this is ridiculous. Um, this is ridiculous. And I was like, that was kind of like a cornerstone of his campaign was, you know, tariffs. Like, I don't know how this escaped you. Like, if you were, there's billions of dollars in soybeans that is exported to China every year. So if you're a soybean farmer in
Yep.
the United States, you're like acutely aware that you need to keep exporting it to China. So I don't know how this is like fine
And
print for some of
I
them.
mean, to your point, it's not like this didn't happen the first time he was president.
Oh yeah,
The
they had
first
to
time he was
subsidize the
president,
farmers the first
he
time.
had, I think, what was it, 28 billion or something like that, and because the retaliation that China did to
Yeah,
get back at us was they just stopped buying our soybeans and started buying them from Brazil, which is the same thing they're going to do right now.
yeah,
Okay, and but it's like you wonder, how does this escape people? There's a guy that I know, and I've talked about this before, but I just we were kind of friends, and I just had to like at a certain point just say, you know what, dude, I'm sorry, you're
yeah.
done.
It's just
But
I was thinking about that. Like, there's people I've had, and like, not that I won't be friends with you, but like, it's gonna put a strain on the relationship,
hmm,
and like, it's gonna, like, and that strain will test our friendship, and if we're not the best of friends,
yeah, I
we
mean,
gotta call it.
in
I gotta
my
call it.
case, this was somebody I could definitely live without. I mean, it was one of those things where, um, oh, we'd have breakfast when he was in town. He and his wife, we'd have breakfast, maybe we'd have dinner, just really casual. But it got where he knew what I did, and he subscribed to my newsletter. Never would really make a comment. And then one day, I don't know what hit him, and we had this back and forth text thing that went on all day. At some point, he was critical of Biden because he said, this Biden economy, I've got a business, I'm about to go under. My food is, or the stuff I sell is too expensive. Nobody wants to work. They want like $15 an hour. I'm not paying that. And I'm
15,
sitting there
15
and
an
I'm like,
hour.
yeah, I'm like, well, dude,
15 an hour.
yeah. I'm like, well, dude, oh, look, I'm about to close my doors because of Biden. I said, so why would you vote for the tariff guy? Because if you think it's bad now, why would you vote for the tariff guy? He says, well, I don't think he's going to do that. I'm like, God, that's all he's talking about
That
is
was
tariffs and
that
immigrants.
was
That's
the
it.
conversation I've had with so many people on the campaign trail. It was like, well, he's not going to do Project 2025. He said he had nothing to do with it, even though like there was there was so much evidence to the contrary that like there was so much forensic evidence. Even now, it's like Russ Vought is running the show in the White House. He's done so much.
Oh, I know.
And
And
like, but
somebody pointed
until
out
Trump
something.
says it, Trump has to literally come out and say, "I am doing Project 2025." Elon Musk, that was a Nazi salute. China doesn't pay shit. You do. Like Trump has to fit like, and he has to say all of this stuff. He's like, by the way, windmills are fine. I just don't like them because I'm weird. And then people be like, oh, okay. Until he says it, it's so bizarre that they're like, yeah, he's like, oh, I didn't think he was going to do that, even though like I've been to 30 rallies of his. I've
Yeah,
listened to him talk. He's
there's
definitely
a
going to do that.
there's just such somebody's going to probably, if we make it to the other side of all this, there are going to be like B school studies of this phenomenon of a person saying, I'm going to shoot you, and you not believing him.
Yeah,
I'm going to do X over and over and over and over, and you just think, oh well, he didn't really mean that. He was just joking.
That's true. If he said it, he didn't mean it. If he meant it,
What's
he
the
didn't
whole,
do it. I mean, if he did it,
figuratively, literally?
if he did it, there's probably a good reason. And if there wasn't a good reason, what about Hillary Clinton? Am I
Yeah,
right?
it's.
Yeah.
Hopefully we will make it to the other side.
I'd love to see. I am anxious. I am curious to see like what's like the line. Like we're gonna find out. Like there's Trump's gonna do something, and it's just something's gonna happen where you'll have a lot of maggots being like, nah, and a lot of us on the progressive side are gonna be like, wait, that was it? That was the line?
Oh, I
Like
know.
a way a lot of people online turned on Elon because they found out that he wasn't he was hiring like someone else to
Oh,
like
to play his video games.
yeah, and like a lot of
Look,
people
wait
were
a
like
minute, man.
I don't think he's a genius anymore, and I was like, that was it, and then I was like, you know what, I'll take
Yeah,
it.
I
I'll,
this
I'll
same
take it.
guy, when I, one of our little breakfast, get-togethers, and we were talking about just whatever the state of politics was, and he says to me, "Well, wait a minute, I know I voted for Trump twice, but I'm not a Trump guy. That January 6th thing, that was just, that was bad." And I'm like, so the racism, the making fun of crippled people, the Cajun, none of that got to you. you know, it was January 6th, but okay, fine. You finally see the light.
The way he voted for him a third time or January
He
6th.
voted for him anyway. Yeah, that was the line when, yeah, one day,
That
like
is
I say,
funny
it got
though that
heated and he
he
was
voted
like, you know
it
what?
for. There's like
I'm
I
voting
voted
for
for
him.
him twice. I'm gonna vote for him a third time, but I'm not like a Trump guy. It's just sort of a weird thing where everyone sort of divorces themselves from
Well,
like
it's just the
elections.
Democrats are so bad, man. You got to understand. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. I mean,
Biden's
listen,
out here trying to
I would
help poor
appreciate
people. What the hell?
if he hated the Democrats for the correct reasons. That I'm like, okay, you know what? But it's never like the right reasons. It's always like something, trans kids in bathrooms and the Keystone Pipeline
Well, for
that
this
Biden
guy,
never shut down.
this was the giveaway. He said to me that Kamala Harris was an empty suit. And I'm like, okay, let's take her resume and make it, Dave Smith, the white guy. Would you really still say that?
Yeah, I
And
mean,
he
like,
just kind
well,
of looked at me.
also like the other part, like right now, I think Trump is my guess. This is my prediction, and I don't think I'm going to be wrong. I think Trump, he's not going to run again, right? Not going to run as the president. He's going to, JD Vance will be the
He's going to
president.
do a Putin. Remember when
Yeah, yeah,
Putin
yeah, yeah,
did
yeah,
that
yeah,
deal where
yeah.
he couldn't be president, so he's going to be like
The vice
prime minister
president,
or
the vice
something, and then he
president.
puts this other guy,
Yeah,
Medvedev,
yeah, Medvedev. Yeah, exactly.
fooling absolutely no one.
That's why, because that would make sense and explain why JD Vance is like front and center. And so, like, normally, the VP is just there to break Senate ties and go to funerals. That's it, right? I mean, if there's some other function that they do, I'd love to know. Like, normally we make fun of it. Like, there's a show called Veep for a reason. Uh, and so but like he's included him and had him be front and center like way more than historically it should, and I'm like, all right, well, there's definitely a reason for this because he wants JD Vance to be ingratiated with the American public
Hmm.
uh, for when
Well,
he
the only
goes.
problem with that is JD Vance. I mean, every time he opens his mouth, it's like, wow,
that
keep
that is
talking,
that
dude.
is true. Yeah, I mean the only thing that's going to stop JD Vance is JD Vance.
Yeah, Walter, man, it's been a pleasure.
It's been an absolute
Um,
pleasure, man.
I appreciate, because look, man, I know how busy you are,
Thank
and
you.
I wish I had your your Sky Miles or whatever. But man, you're all over the place. Look, we've got to do this again because I'm
Absolutely,
telling you,
please.
we need guys like you. And to the extent that I can, you know, elevate you on Substack, I am happy to do it.
Awesome, man. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. And yeah, hit me up anytime.
I'll do
I'd
that.
love it.
Folks, subscribe to his newsletter. I looked, I was shocked to know how few subscribers you had, and I was
I
like,
just
okay.
started. I was like, damn it, yeah. So
And
it's
oh, and by the way, subscribe to my newsletter too.
oh yeah, his name too. Yeah.
Yeah, by the way,
Yeah.
but anyway, I will push out a recording of this. Give me 24 hours, and it'll go out to all my folks. And let's be in touch, man.
Awesome. Thanks. It's been an absolute
Okay,
pleasure, man. Have a great weekend.
I will try.
All right.
I'll turn the TV off.
Oh
Take care.
yeah. Just turn everything off. Yeah. Thank you, man. Cheers, bro.
All right.